exactly what you did. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Could you tone it down just a little bit? Thank you, thank you. Lovely. So this is actually the second iteration of the show, and I was just explaining that when I do a show, okay, this is going to sound hokey-pokey and sentimental and stuff like that, but I like to dip into the ether and just feel the energy and perform from that standpoint. So, yes, I've done theater where you run the script through your mind until you get every word and every phrase and every action in place. And I thoroughly enjoy that process, but I think art offers us an opportunity to really dive in there and explore what else there is out of the safe zone. Because it's okay to be unsafe if we want to explore. Right, so with that being said, we'll get straight into it, and they are part of the cast, as you can see. So we just have to work with what we have. Right, so here's the human mind. So the whole idea of the show Transference was to question myself, what am I bringing to the table? What's my responsibility in this game? Because usually when I'm... Sorry? I knew you wouldn't repeat that, you're too shy. What do I bring to the table? I mean, when I get cut off in traffic, what's my response to that? You know, when I cut somebody off in traffic, what's my responsibility to that? How come I'm always right when I cut the next person off? And how come it's okay? You know, because it's just 5 seconds, it's like, okay, you know, I'm sorry, it's done. But when somebody cuts you off, you cut me off? Are you serious? You know, again? You know, a red car again? So anyway, so when I was putting the show together, I was trying to explore the idea of what do we subconsciously bring to the table, and what are we saying without knowing we're saying that? You know, so if you heard the sound, this was actually mixed by a friend who was at the studio called Mike. But it's my whole journey when I got to London. Some of the expectation was, okay, this is going to be easy. And one line I say is that you're expected to be paved in gold, but instead the bleeding cold, you know? Oh. And which then takes me to the morning where each morning, sorry, I slipped into performance just like that. People say, has he begun? Has he not? I don't sound the alarm like, and now we ring the bell to say we have begun. Shall we? Shall we engage? I think we shall. Right. So, each morning we spend the time to look at ourselves and determine if this existence has really matched up to our desires. But instead of seeing the beauty that lies before us, we instead see the dirt on the mirror. We focus on the cracks along the sides, the edges of it, and forget to see that which truly lies before us. Instead of seeing the image that we so came to do, instead we see the workday, we see the history, we see the disappointments, maybe the hopes and joys. But from data gathered from a lot of people who had looked at mirrors, the joy is not usually part of it. How can it be so disappointing when we see a universe looking upon itself, reflecting itself, and not appreciating itself? What do we bring to the table that's so fearsome and so demeaning that we fail to say, here I am, there I stand, and I appreciate me. Therefore, if you don't appreciate me, that's all fine. Instead, it looks like the program has been written and rewritten to demean us. You don't need to look far, because if you look around you, there are a lot of messages that say. So, what then happens from then on is to go back to the video of the performance and just watch it with an open mind. Try to engage with it from the audience point of view,
and then tie on my own experience and my own thoughts to that. And from that, I then write out a more scripted performance, expanding on themes that came through it. For instance, in transference, what I realized in the discussion that we had after the performance was that there was a common thread when it came to titles. That part I didn't capture in the video, but we talked about names. We talked about my coming to America and assuming an American identity and being so far from home, and having been away from home for so long, having not lived there for so long. What have I become? Am I African American? Am I African American? Or am I an African in America? Am I I'm still an African physically, spiritually, mentally, however you can phrase that, but not from a participatory point of view, as in living in Africa, as in being in Africa. So, what am I now transferring into this lifetime, into this moment that defines me? So the whole idea that came through was that I was yearning for a label. I was looking for a name, which is it's an interesting place to be, because there's a sense of being discombobulated, just being lost in the whole scheme of things. There's no particular familiar frame of reference, because having not lived back home in Zimbabwe for close to 8 years now, lived there like 3 months or more, I just feel so disconnected, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't know the day-to-day goings on in Zimbabwe right now. From an experiential perspective, of course, I get the news and stuff. So this yearning for a name, a label, was interesting, because most of the time a label is associated with negative connotations. So in this case, I found myself discussing with the audience this idea of wanting a name, desiring a name. The whole sense of identity came into play. Another thing that I'm going to expand. So before I go on to the other thing, so taking this idea of this theme of identity, I'm going to dig deeper into it and see where I stand at the moment with the whole idea of identity, and also what does it mean in general when you look at it. So there's an exploration to be made there, and I'm going to get into that. The second thing that came up was the idea of the mirror. I really loved how I expressed um, the the idea of self-reflection through a physical object, which is a mirror. But then we get entangled in the whole physicality of the object itself, and kind of like forget the purpose of why we're looking at the object in the first place. For instance, there's a part where I talked about you look in the mirror, but you're distracted by the cracks on the side of the mirror. You're distracted by the dirt on the surface of the mirror, and forget to see that which is beyond. So that's an idea I'm going to fully expand on and really dig deep into, and see how far I can take it. So for me, so far, transference is such an important theme, because as I'm rewiring my brain, reassessing myself as a human being, who am I? What defines me? What do I want to define me? So it becomes really interesting to see the pointers which we choose to define ourselves with, but also as I'm going through this process, it's interesting to see what behaviors I'm carrying and try to trace where they're coming from. try to trace where the subconscious actions that I partake in are coming from. So that's the crux of the matter. Um, so after the performance, what I like to do is just generally ask it's very important for me to engage with the audience in a forum kind of setting, not from a Western perspective, but more from an African perspective, where we sit around in a circle and discuss openly what people see. So in my case, I don't particularly like to drive the conversation. I like to open up the platform and see where the conversation is coming from, and what people are feeling, just by prompting people, asking them what they see in the work, what they thought of the performance, and then carry the discussion from there. What I love about it is each show has got its own energy, its own feel, its own vibe, its own theme, and I love to explore that. During the discussion on transference, there was really a common agreement within the audience that the work seemed to have a musicality to it. That seemed to come across quite a lot, and I love that when people pick up the musicality in my paintings. The other thing that also came through was that when one person mentioned something they saw, the shift between the moment when other people didn't really realize it and when they pick it up, the aha moment is a really beautiful moment to observe. And each time it happens, there's always this energy in the air where it forms a kind of unity amongst the audience members, and one wonders what that is. I mean, from the point that what we see, or at least what I see in an abstract painting, is what I'm bringing to the table. What I've learned, what I hope for, what I dream about, what I've experienced. All these influence my take on the artwork. So it's interesting that when people show each other things, and then they suddenly become magnetized and energized by it, where's the part of transference in that? How does transference play to that? That's what my performance is about. I like to really dig deep into things, and with the paintings, Mentalscape 1, Mentalscape 2, I must make a note that the titles are insignificant, really. Why I say so is because once I've put down the work, once it's done, I really find no need to title some of the pieces of work, because it's kind of sets a tone for the audience, unless of course that's the artist's intention. But personally, I prefer the work to be untitled, but then again, that's a title within itself. So the titles are really of no significance, if I may put it that way. I would leave it as untitled and just number them, but then again, that becomes, there is commentary in that too. But I thought I would just mention that because I have one called Door, and Door is, I came up with the name after I finished the painting, because there was an area where I deliberately put a door in the abstract painting. So there's a section that's not purely abstract, but it's actually got a door in it. So if you look at the painting and see only the door, then you might be bound by the title it's only. What I would love people to do is see beyond the title and come up with their own conclusion. Name the painting. What would you name it? What would you call it? And Mentalscape 1, Mentalscape 2 also, those are words I put together and just threw onto the paintings. And now Bloody Immigrants is an interesting one because I painted that in 2008 when I got to London. And how it came about was there was a news report, and one of the ministers said, "Oh, the bloody immigrants are taking all the jobs, and all the crime is because of the bloody immigrants." And then 6-7 years later, I'm in America, and we have a president echoing the very same um, sentiments about immigrants. And what struck me most is that America is a land of immigrants. So we live in a time where we believe the lie so much that we've made it a truth to die for, which is rather unfortunate because America is a land of immigrants, and if you're not Indian, if you're not Native American, then you don't belong here. But now some races are not wanted here. Anyway, that's what Bloody Immigrants is about. There's also a Paperwork One, and Paperwork One is a woodblock print that I also did in London at the Heels workshop when I was studying at the Slade School of Fine Art. And it's basically about the toils you go through when you're doing paperwork, because when I got to London, that was one of the key things that I did for a long time, getting all the school papers in order, getting my travel documents in order. So paperwork really resonates with me on a deep level through the experience I've had with him. So I put that in there because I think there's a lot we transfer physically. Well, I know there's a lot we transfer physically through paperwork. Information is passed through their desires, needs. Paperwork is this interesting connection point where life happens. It's the documentation of a slice of this existence that we'll be going through at that particular moment. So it then becomes interesting that this bureaucracy, this system that we work through is something that may also imprison us limit us in a lot of ways, as much as it liberates us. So paperwork was put in there as a play on the physical aspect of transferring information from the brain to the paper, and then from the paper to the powers that be. So that was kind of like a joke I put in there, but I don't think people picked up on it, or at least I didn't ask about it. Yeah, so that's the exhibition Transference. Thanks for watching.